Are you wanting to create a highly prosperous photography business doing what you love? Or maybe you have a great business already and want to up your game? Then you're in the right place. Master craftsman photographer Luci Dumas and her guests are here to support you on your journey. Now here's your hostess and tour guide, Luci.
You must be the change you wish to see in the world. And that is a quote supposedly by Mahatma Gandhi, although some of the sources say no, but I'm just going with it. And it is our guest, Jane Goodrich's favorite quote. So welcome again, and thank you for listening to The Profitable Photographer. I'm still Luci Dumas, and I still want to help you have all the success in the world. I have a little, this morning, I was looking on a website, Facebook group that was about people from my high school who have passed away. And as I scrolled down, I was like, holy cow, those senior pictures are important, because over and over again, and these people, well, anyway, I just want to shout out to people who do senior portraits for you to understand what you're doing is really important. And for some people, it is the only time they've ever and will ever have a professional portrait. So give it your all, honor what you're doing. And people all over the world appreciate you, even though they don't know who you are maybe later. Did that make any sense, Jane?
That did. That was actually very I was choking up a little bit, because I do realize that, I mean, it is so important to have photographs when there is a passing of somebody and they just pull out the photographs that they have. Or, you know, if my grandmother passed away and I was lucky that I had photographed her, just to have a portrait of her, even for the funeral. And so it is very important to what we do, and that shouldn't be taken lightly.
Right.
So.
Right. And thank you. And it just dawned on me that, like, the senior portrait seems like maybe inconsequential, and it just really hit me this morning. No, it's not.
It's not.
It's not. And I was the editor of my high school yearbook, so I had a lot of senior portraits that I worked with. I didn't take them. Anywho, so we're going to get started, and I want to introduce Jane Goodrich. She, although she sounds like she's English, she lives in New York, correct?
I live in New York, yes. And originally from England.
Yes.
Been here a while, so the accent's reduced a little bit.
A little bit, yep. So she's an amazing newborn and family photographer. If you go to your website, you'll be like, oh, gorgeous. She is a seasoned expert in the biz. She mentors, and she is the founder of Picsello.
Yep.
And Picsello is a software that I'll ask her later in the show a little bit more about that, but it's to make your life easier and more profitable. Okay, and she's also taught classes and seminars such as the PPA, Anna Brandt's Baby University, the Baby Summit, the Milky Way's Business Retreat, and more. And she has shared her invaluable insights through platforms like Picsello. I'm not sure what that is.
Yeah.
So, hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here. I
Thanks
really love your show.
Yes.
Funny.
We've already had nice conversations before we started. So now we have to get serious and actually share some cool stuff. So, how did you get into photography?
So, and I will try and be quick, because it's sort of a little bit of a long story, but so I've been doing full-time photography for 13 years. Prior to that, I worked in advertising, have my MBA. I wanted to be, work for Procter & Gamble, but then one day I was like, I need to be a photographer. I grew up in a household full of cameras, and my older sister was a photographer. and my second older sister has a small business, and I was determined that I was going to do something different because I'm also an identical twin. So I needed something for myself. And then, 14 years ago, I was like, why are you not doing what you love? And so that sort of spurred on my transition to photography, and that was sort of back in 2009. So yeah, that's sort of my history of, and I love children, I love families. I wish I could photograph newborns every day.
Yeah, I'm often called the baby whisperer by myself.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of maybe even volunteering at hospitals just to hold babies.
Yeah.
I now, Jane, I did weddings for 10 years, and then kids, babies specifically, and little ones for about 10, and then it morphed into family portraits. And I really miss having those little babies on my shoulder and stuff. So what I hear is the photography was kind of in your DNA.
Yeah.
And you went to business school. So best of both worlds.
Yeah, and I have the marketing side where I worked for, ad agencies and building brands. So I feel lucky in the fact that I was able to take what I learned in my MBA. And my dad's a professor of business too. So it's sort of drilled in. His was actually more tailored towards musicians, but it was always like a art and business conversation. So it just always talked about it. So I feel lucky in the fact that I started off profitable and started off, didn't have to, I did my, portfolio build, but I was never shying away from pricing.
Right.
And so, and I think that that's hard nowadays. And we've had that conversation before, but it was easier for when I started than it is now.
I love that you had a background that serves your photography business, because if we don't get work and we don't have profitable pricing and all the other things that make a business run, it doesn't matter how good we are in photography. I imagine you would agree.
I 100% agree. I think that there are so many talented photographers that, over-index on the art side, when really, if you're wanting to do this full time, you have to index on the business side of it. I like to think of it as it's not a job. Some people go into it thinking, oh, this is just, I'm doing this as a job. It's actually starting a business. And if you can sort of frame that in your head of like starting a business versus being a job, you then see that there's a lot of different costs associated with running a business.
That's very interesting. And I've heard that before, that so many of us, even people who are very successful, and I will say I maybe err on the side of I created a job for myself back in the day. Can you kind of define the difference between a job and a business?
So a job, so how I interpret it, it could be completely wrong. So I like to think of my job as actually a photographer within my business. So within my, so that business is doing the account. Well, I outsource accounting. That's the number one thing you should outsource at first, I personally think. And it has all these different facets to my business, but my job, I think, is a photographer, but it's also a business owner. So you actually have two jobs. And I think if you can frame it in terms of, I think often photographers, we all name our businesses. I did it, my name. So when I say, it's not I'm charging, it's my business charges, right? So, and then being able to sort of take the, for your podcast listeners, I'm trying to like articulate it visually. And so your business has costs, and then you get paid after your business for doing the photography portion of the job. So of the business. So that sort of really helps of like, if you can even change the terminology of how you talk about pricing too, of like, well, my business charges, my studio charges, not I charge. It really helps separate yourself, because then it's sort of like, and even in your client's mind of like, oh, Jane's studio or Jane's business, charges, or it really, really helps just to shift that mindset of like, I'm not charging that amount. It's my business and I have costs. So
I like it. So let me see if I can paraphrase what you're saying is, if you realize that you have a business and you're working for the business as a photographer, not that you're a photographer with a business, then there's value in the separation. Sometimes, one of the big issues when I did weddings is some people would be like, why do I have to pay everything up front? I want to do part now, and then if you show up and I like the work and stuff, I'll pay you the rest. And I was able to say, so it's company policy.
Yeah.
Rather than I do it because I need the money, or something so personal. So I really like that. Yeah. I also like that focusing on this is a business perhaps focuses people's intentions and like what you read, what you study. If you go to school, sure, take photography, but take business.
Definitely.
Like really take a stand for, this is a business I'm creating, not a job as a photographer. So
yeah, it's a business that gives you income, and you have, photography is a job, but also how about editing is another job, or you can price yourself enough to pay for that outsource the editing. But also, you're a salesperson. Like there are different jobs within your business. Mm-hmm. So, and it frames it of like, businesses have costs, right? Jobs don't, right? The jobs really have costs. If I was going to work out, oh no, I have a paycheck, right?
Right.
So it really helps you sort of frame it. And if you can, I love the company policy. Mine was called studio policy. And sometimes my fake studio manager would have to come on and answer a hard email. and actually it wasn't really fake, but it was an assistant of mine. And I ended up, I asked her, I was like, can I use your name sometimes? Because it's so much easier to say I'm popping in here. Jane's on a shoot, blah, 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 just want to give you the information, because it's very hard, because you as a photographer are if you've had all these like icky conversations where someone's like negotiating with you, but then you have to go and like photograph them, and you have even just to sort of separate it that way, I find that my assistant is much stricter. That's just a tip.
I have a really, really mean boss that holds the line on me. So
I hope my clients aren't listening. They're just kidding.
So I'm getting it like a whole revelation about how people who are like, oh, I need a little extra money, so I'm going to go shoot people. I said that exaggerated, because I think words are important, and photograph portrait sessions. I don't shoot people.
We all do.
But I'm going to shoot people for a little extra money. And that mindset maybe is one of the things that keeps the culture that's going on now of people not valuing themselves and their business and charging very little, because in a job, if you got paid $300 for what looks like 2 hours of work, that's a good job. Right. But if whoever's listening to this that needs to hear this, if you can up level your consciousness that this is a business and a profession, then we can realize that, oh, there's a lot of jobs within the business.
Yeah.
And yeah, does that
resonates with me? And what I've tried to educate a little bit on is it isn't a quick extra income just because you have a camera and a computer, because one, there's tax implications, but two, if you are interested in doing this for extra income, you know, be a second photographer. Likely you are going to make more money and not having to build your business, because one of the things that we see nowadays is, oh, so-and-so, they look so successful. They book out their mini sessions or their shoots all the time. Well, they have a client base that is coming back year after year. And so early on, if you're thinking about going into it, you know, second shoot for weddings or associate shoot for another photographer, that way you don't actually have to build the business. You can get an hourly pay and without, or if you really want to build your business, just know that even though it seems like there aren't costs now, you know, I'm obsessed with my calculator, but we've done like studies of like how often photographers replace their cameras, replace their lenses, replace their computer. You know, you have costs, even your internet, your gas, driving. There's so many costs that are associated with it. And all I want is for someone to make more money than, you know, extra income. Say the kid down the street that's borrowing their parents' lawnmower is making $25 an hour to mow the lawn. You need to be making more than that, you know?
Yeah.
So I just, at the end of the day is like, and again, another example I have is the people say, well, I need more experience. I need this. If you look back at my website, 2010, I don't know how people bought my work, but they did. But they also, if your website reflects your work and your pricing, doesn't matter, right? You know, you can't keep doing free shoots or cheaper shoots for the long period of time just to actually get experience. You can actually start charging pretty much from day one. So
I agree with that.
And charging your worth.
Right. My suggestion is always, and tell me if this is in line with what you're saying, don't charge until you've got the portfolio and you're good enough that you can charge good money.
Right.
And we don't have to be fabulous. We just have to be good enough that someone will pay us, right, rather than starting out what I call cheap and cheerful. I don't know if that's a British term.
I think I've heard cheap and cheerful.
Yeah, I think it is. That and gobsmacked. I love those.
I love gobsmacked is a brilliant word. I'm going to use that more. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, when we start out really cheap, there's no coming back for that.
No.
To then start getting those people who are now referring us to be like, people. Oh, she paid $200, but I'm $2,000. So free or charge well. It sounds like that's some methodology. Yeah. Because one of the things is, you know, you can be the 1% that can actually build. I've really not spoken to anybody that can really, you know, not have to work to get themselves out of that hole, you know, that they've built for themselves, and being the cheap photographer in town, or, you know, and you can't really compete on pricing because somebody's always going to be cheaper. What you need to do is figure out what you need to make and focus on yourself and getting your clients. There is the mindset of like, oh, everyone's charging here, or, you know, so cheap. That's not the case. Might be in the case where you are looking at Facebook groups or something like that. But I mean, for me, I used to want to rank on Google really high, but I don't really care anymore because I have enough repeat clients that keep coming back every year and they refer me to other people. So like the higher end photographers are not necessarily ranking high on Google, and that's for a reason, because they already have their client base. So I think that you can start what you need to go on, and you just have to find, you know, like if you're a family photographer, how many clients do you really need?
max 100.
Mhm.
Just look at your local area within the radius of, 30 miles and see how many kids are in each school and how many babies are being born. And you'll be surprised at how many families there are, and that you only need, you need your first 10 raving fans that are going to help you, get to the 100. And then they come back every year.
Mhm.
And that's what you need. So you don't have to have the whole area. You just want to, if you want to do this seriously and make a living, that's a mindset you have to take.
So the mindset is what? Can you summarize that again?
So the mindset is like, we go into the, let's say the groups or the Facebook groups of like, no one's charging around here, or people around here won't pay that. They will, and you don't need the whole town and the whole surrounding towns to pay it. You need 100 clients to pay it. You don't need, so, and start looking. I like to, I went through a period where there was an influx in my area of extremely cheap photographers, and I ended up having to unfollow everybody because I was going down I was rabbit holing. I was like negative. And so one of the things I actually took a course on, like mindset, and they said, well, just look around, take a day and look around. And I was like, oh, wow, people are in my area. They are paying $1,000 for 1 week of kids camp, but they're paying 8 weeks and they have a nanny. Or I was looking at like the schools around me, just in my 2 towns, like 5,000 families. Like there's an abundance. And I started to shift of being like, there is money out there that will, and I'm not charging, a ridiculous amount. I'm charging enough to make a very good living in my mind. So
yeah, I'm thinking about like, unless someone's living in like a pioneer town in the middle of nowhere, where I'm thinking about like cowboy times and sheriffs and lawlessness. If there's a town or a city, there's going to be a mayor, a doctor, or somewhere within, a driving radius.
And
architect. Like there are people who are professional that work and earn money and have extra money.
Well, and it's also, I found, I'm actually in a very wealthy neighborhood. And I've actually found, for me, it's actually not the richest that come for me. It's ones that value photography and like my style, right? So it doesn't, and they don't have to be the ones that are making millions of dollars, right? They're, single moms, and, they just love photography. And so that's one thing that people say, oh, you can charge because you're in that area. And I'm like, it's actually not what you think. Like, I think my local area is the worst for it. And they're very like, they just don't value photography. And that's all you need. You need people that love photography, like, and you can't put a price on that. And you can't put a job title or an income on that, because people will save. One woman, she was a single mom, and she would buy, 3 packages a year from me. And I'm like, I don't know how much you make, but I'm at least 10% of your income, for what she wanted. And that's what she wanted. And so, and you just have to find them. And then she was great at referring me to people that liked photography. So
what I hear is, don't be afraid to charge what you need to charge to be as successful as you need and want to be. Figure out how to find the people who agree with you and are willing to work with you and give you that. So I love it. And
I think, well, one thing that I want to add to that, because like you said, like have a takeaway, is like, if somebody would want to, like, they're like, okay, Jane, I have no idea who that person is, right? Well, go through, if you're a photographer, go through your client list of who are the clients that you absolutely love, and make an ideal client. And I actually had, I did this exercise very close after the mindset work that I did. And her name was Jessica. She was XY year old. I actually went from the age and I worked backwards to the most popular name. And, you know, I actually got like 6 inquiries within a month. They were all called Jessica. But visualize it and figure out where they shop and where are they going. And you can actually do that with the people that you know first, rather than starting with a blank slate.
Hold on one sec. I need to ask my painter to stop sanding. I don't know if you can hear it.
I can't
Can you hear it? No?
No.
But I'm going to pause.
Okay.
And I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I'm getting my house painted finally. And I asked him to be quiet for an hour and 15, and he was mixing up some paint, not thinking that it was also noisy. So anywho, okay, where were we? And it was more the mental distraction because I know Zoom filters it out. Okay, so you were saying that we want to figure out who our favorite clients are, give them a name, and then figure out where the heck similar people hang out. Because birds of a feather flock together. So what if you don't have clients? So you can't look at, oh, who's my favorite client? Well, I don't have any. So
right. So what
then?
Yeah. So what I would do is, you know, depends if you don't even have a website yet, or you don't have any clients, you will have to sort of make up a hypothetical client, right? You know, if you're a newborn photographer, Google like, what is the average age, you know, of a mom in your area, and work backwards. And, you know, your pricing, likely they're going to have both working, right? Or one working. And figure out like, who are your friends groups of, you know, okay, all of my friends are nurses, right? Okay, yeah, it's that type of occupation, or teachers or architects or anything like that. But again, it's sort of like figuring out the mindset of people who value photography. And so, and then putting a name to that. And you can, you know, maybe they're 28, and what was the most popular woman's name 28 years ago?
Right.
And go backwards. Like, I like that because it's just sort of like, that's the most names that you're going to get. And then you can start seeing, because it's not so abstract. It is like, okay, I'm going to go after, you know, Jessica. I'm going to use mine. And she is 32 and she likes XYZ. And then you start seeing, you know, maybe she isn't on Instagram, or she is on Instagram, or maybe she's on Facebook, or maybe I just need to make the website so easy for her to use and comfort. For me, what it was I knew she was a working mom. And so for me, I wanted to make sure that she knew that that decision was taken care of, and her kids are going to be happy on the shoot, because she has less time than she probably has more time than she thinks with the kids, but she wants a weekend, or she wants the evening, any time that she spends with her family. She doesn't want a disaster. She wants to know she's taken care of. So how do you message that? It's not all about photography. It is about your clients. And it's like, they aren't going to be taking the risk with their money or their time. And mine, that was actually time. I really was like, you know, you're going to get a great experience. Your kids are going to be happy. And that's, again, if you get an inquiry, that's in the inquiry email of like, you know, so the more that you can know the mindset of why someone is buying photographs too, like, so, you know, mine was definitely towards working moms who really just wanted, you know, a good experience, but also needed them for holiday cards or a birth announcement, or wanted them every year because she wants to feel like she's part of the family, you know.
So what I'm hearing underneath all of that is pain points. So what you just shared in the last minute or so was the solutions to the pain points. So I imagine at some point you identified what are my ideal clients up at night worrying about? What's their priorities? What is it that would be a not satisfactory experience for them? Because in this case, this is a mom who doesn't have time to waste time or to do all the things that it takes and hire somebody that isn't going to be full service, because your client, wait, you said it's Jennifer?
Jessica.
So Jessica, Jessica, Jennifer, and Michelle and Stephanie, they were all in the same
Yeah,
the same birth group.
Yeah.
And they're the same.
I had a lot of those too.
Michelle.
Yeah.
Anyway, that these are the things that are priorities to them. And so then you can address that in multiple levels, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
Making everything easy, communicating that you're making everything easy for them so they can kind of go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I know I can just hire Jane, or dear listener, hire you.
Yes.
And it's taken care of, and they can relax and focus on what they really care about. So I like that.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing here too is, because like first on my actual questions was, how do we price for profit? And so what I'm hearing without having asked you that question is the foundation of that. Am I right in that?
Yeah.
That so first of all, you're saying you need to know that there are people who will pay what you need to be profitable. You need to figure out who they are, where they hang out, how to reach them. Right? So what would be a next step in pricing for profit?
So I think, and we covered it a little bit earlier in terms of, knowing that it's a business. So I would recommend, having the step probably it can come at any point. You can even be charging now, but to really understand your numbers and how many shoots that you can do. And so doesn't really matter what income you need to make. You might need to make a lot less living in, a town, where you don't have, $1 million house, your house is 100,000, than somebody that is, trying to bring in income for $1 million house. But you need to know, and also how many hours you need to work, right? So you have to figure all this out of how much income do you need to make? And sometimes that is quite difficult for people to actually know, well, I don't know how much money I need to make, which is quite scary. But it is, if you are working at a job now, what is the replacement value of that? Just if you have to start somewhere, okay, I'm working and I'm making $30,000. I'm going to start and make $30,000 with photography if I want to quit my job, or I need to make 40 because I'm making 10 for my photography business now. And then you go through, what's your current costs and also future costs, because if your camera 3 years down the road, breaks and you need a new one, that's a significant amount of money, coming out, or your computer, we know those computers. And then it'll come, then you can figure out what you need to charge per session, right? So, or what you need to make in revenue per session. You might have more costs if you're selling wall art, but what is your take-home revenue that you need to make? Right. So that would be one of the things that I would look at. And it might scare you because you might need to be charging $1,500 for a family photo shoot and you're charging $300 now. But again, it's sort of you don't need that many clients. You deserve to be paid for your time and talent. Right. There's something I heard early in my career, one of the speakers that was talking about pricing for profit, and the old joke is, well, I'm losing $25 per client once I broke down all my expenses, but I'm going to make it up in volume. That is funny. That is a good one. Yeah. Yeah. And that model, I've sat with people who were charging 3 zeros rather than 4, and broken down. Okay, so if you're able to keep half of that because expenses, taxes, so forth,
how many sessions do you need to do in a year to reach your goals? And it can be like 500 or something.
Yeah. And
Nobody's got time and energy for that.
but also physicality, like, so that's one of the reasons, and we can chat about it, but I did create a calculator that was based on time studies, right? Because physically you can't do that. Like, so I had mentored a photographer, and she had, I think it was weddings, and she wasn't, she was in an area where you didn't have to make as much as if you were in New York, but she was doing I think it was $800, and she was like, I've done my cost of doing business. I was like, okay, I highly doubt that can be profitable, but let's go through the numbers. And what she'd done was she'd actually used someone's calculator. She was smart. She was like, I'm going to do a calculator, but she'd put in 100 weddings. First of all, the average full-time wedding photographer does around 25, right? And if they're doing more than that, what they're doing is they're outsourcing the editing, or they're having an associate. So, but for the regular wedding photographer, you have about 25 hours. So I was like, okay, times that by 4, times that 800 by 4, is your base is 3,200, which is still low in wedding photography, but it is more realistic, because she was also saying, I don't understand why wedding photographers charge $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 in my area. I'm in a small town. When realistically, they've just run their numbers. And so the light bulb went off. And so then for me, what I was realizing that's missing sort of in the industry is sort of like, how many shoots can you physically do versus how many can you do? It's like an open-ended, I will do 3,000 when I'm first starting out. I don't know. 1, can you physically do it? 2, that's a lot of clients to try and get.
Right. And with weddings, that's a lot of time away from your family, your friends. When I started doing weddings, I had a social community, and then I realized I cannot hang out with them and drink, and maybe back in those days I used to smoke a little. I can't do that on a Friday night because I have to be clear on Saturday, and then to Sunday I'm in pain from running, the adrenaline hangover, the physical hangover. And pretty soon that whole social group went away. And if I had, and I did have a spouse at the time, and he was lonely because I wasn't there with that social group with him. And I sacrificed a lot of my prime life in my 30s and 40s doing weddings. Eventually I got where I would only do 2 or 3 a month. And then I would send them to friends, and those friends would send theirs back to me. But the lifestyle consideration, even if we could do that, is that serving, like, we've only got so much time on the planet.
Right.
So I love you saying that the physicality, can you actually do that? And do you want to?
Right. Well, and it's also a case of like, let's treat ourselves like humans that we are, so like the time-based study. And so the 25.6 or whatever I came out is, I actually put in as a 35-hour work week. And by the way, you're going to need 2 weeks vacation and 1 week sick time. Like we are entitled to have a vacation, but not necessarily build it, like, I can't take a vacation because I can't shoot because I need more money, right? So it's trying to treat us as if we are a business, and, your employee yourself needs some time off, and they need to not, and you can work more hours during a busy season, but like at the end of the day, you need to have a realistic of like, what's not going to burn you out, what's not going to like break your back. And also, like you just mentioned, like the physical hangover. I really, we probably weren't going to get into this, but I feel like it's such a physical job that no one really talks about, the actual sacrifices you are making on your body. I have, I'm 47. I have probably have to have surgery on my thumbs. I've had carpal tunnel, I've had ulnar nerve tunnel, I've had mummy thumb, all from carrying my camera. And it's agony during the winter months, and I'm in New York, and because it really hurts. And like, did I know going into photography that I'd be sacrificing actually parts of my body and your back as a wedding photographer? I know so many, and this isn't Debbie Downer. Like, I personally think that you just need to know, because there's a reason why you should probably, if you're a wedding photographer, build in a massage the next day, right? Or buy the gear, buy the proper gear that is going to help you like carry the camera correctly.
Right.
If you're not charging enough, you're not going to be able to get the holster or get an assistant on the shoot to hold your camera.
Right.
So it's.
I just want to jump in here before I forget this, but now in talking, I probably have, but I'm with you. I had such bad thumb. Also, not just carrying, but retouching.
Editing. Yeah.
Those little fine motor skills. And part of why I switched to doing a lot more coaching rather than photographing is the pain in my thumbs.
Yep.
And I know photographers who've had knee replacements in my era, because of what we did. And also it's that they did a study, and photographers and pilots, those are the most stressful jobs. And I'd say we win because pilots get to sit, but we have to work our technical brain and our creative brain. And pilots, there's also creativity in flying, but then we're carrying things. Oh, I know the other thing I wanted to say is I'm always encouraging people not to hold their cameras when they're not shooting. And I'm a big tripod fan, partly because I like to compose. It makes head swaps easier, but also because then I don't have it on my body.
Right.
I remember I used to carry all my stuff, and then they invented the wheel at some point in human history, and I discovered it and put my gear, in the little wheelie carts.
Yeah.
And it was like a revelation. So yeah, thinking about that, this is a very physically, mentally, emotionally, creatively, socially extreme career. And I figured out when I was doing weddings, I was getting, I had this was 25, 30 years ago. My averages were 3,500 to 6,000. So that's a lot more, in real dollars. Okay, where was I going? Oh, still with all the time I put into it, I was making like $15 an hour.
Right.
Because there's just so much more time. Even doing a photo session, it's at least 10 hours of work.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then, and then also the running the business side of it too, of like dealing with inquiries, dealing with like calls, dealing with, your marketing, you're updating this. And ever since social media, it's like an advent and another pressure. So my thing is it's not, I don't think people are out there saying, trying to say, hey, raise your prices because, they're just doing it for the sake of it. It's just like figuring out your prices because, this is an industry where it's physical, it's time consuming, and there's a lot of costs that you may or may not know about. And so just to do that is really, valuing yourself more and your future self. It's not saying, hey, I'm going to be making so much money, but, and again, and I will reiterate this is like, if you are in the need of like, I need extra cash, like look into second shooting rather than starting a business, or you can do the same time, but you might realize that, wow, you've got a lot less stress second shooting and, you might be better. I actually have an assistant who started with me in 2012. And she wanted to start her business. And then she saw all of what I was doing. And she's like, I'm just going to second shoot an associate shoot. And she's probably made more than me in terms of take home and hours worked. Right. So I just think that it can be a way, and it's not necessarily you just because you have a camera doesn't mean you have to learn the business side of it. And whether that is mentoring through someone that's done it before, like you, and if you like in-person sales, you should definitely sign up for Luci's course, because she's the best.
Thank you.
But you have to know that there's a lot of things that it will take to run your business versus just the camera.
Right. I think we've made our point with that. And hopefully there's like, I can hear future people with their minds popping that have not really considered that in that way. So I'm really, really grateful, Jane, that you agreed to be on my show, and B, that you're so clear about pricing for profit is much more than, okay, tell me how to price. What should I charge for an 8x10? I don't know about you, but that kind of makes me a little cuckoo when I see that on somebody's Facebook group. I'm in different Facebook groups, and people are like, what should I charge for this? You can't answer.
Well, basically you have to look at the whole thing, right? Like, how much are you charging for your session fee? How much are you charging, if you're selling digitals, if you're selling prints, like what is the makeup of that, versus how much should I charge for a 5x7? Well,
right.
Yeah.
Or what's the markup? That one always gets me too. Oh, an 8x10 is, let's say, $5.
Right.
So I'm going to mark that up 3 times, because that's sort of you're like in a store that buys goods, a 3 times markup might be standard. But what we're doing, the cost of printing is actually a gift to them. It's our time we're getting paid for.
Right.
Yeah. So any other hot key points that we might have missed on this? I feel like we've covered a lot. I just
probably exhausted your audience talking about it. It's hard. I just think that, well, one, I want to say that, like, it is difficult and it is hard, and you just have to, find your client, do the work on mindset, figure out your costs, and, definitely, it's a business. And so if you were an architect, you would have had an apprentice, or even a hairdresser, you would have learned the business on the go. So we don't necessarily have that structure set up in our industry. So you have to have mentors and coaches that you don't have to not work for free for a year apprenticing somewhere, but you have to sort of, pay for the mentorship in another way, right?
Yeah. The nice thing about paying for mentorship is it's not like I just bought a new computer yesterday, speaking of computers, because my laptop is just really slowing down, and the new Photoshop, it keeps saying this will run better on operating system blah blah blah, and my computer cannot get that operating system anymore. So why did I bring that up? I just had.
I think we were chatting about mentorship and paying for it.
Yes. So buying that computer, well, yes, it's going to make me income because it is a working tool. Not as much or as fast as I see many of my clients earn back, and then more and more and more. Like it's an investment. It's like putting money in stocks.
Right. Well, it's also an investment, and you might not have gone to school you might not have an MBA, like me,
right?
Or you might not have gone to school for business. And actually, even if you did, it's not necessarily like small business entrepreneurship and photography type. So it is more like, okay, well, I'm going to invest myself in a course or a mentorship, like you would to go get your nursing teaching certificate or your realtor's license or anything like that. So that's kind of where we are.
Good point. Really good point. Okay, so we're running short on time. And I know you have I guess you call it a software or a
Yeah.
program called Picsello.com.
Yes.
And I'd love to give you an opportunity to share what that is, like where you came up with the notion, what it is, how it might be different.
Yeah.
Not an hour commercial, but
No,
tell me about it, because I'm always on the lookout to recommend programs that can really help people.
Yeah, and so having been a photographer for a long time and using multiple different softwares and, being cumbersome and, they're not necessarily tailored to photographers, that I decided that I would create one myself that is an all-in-one solution, your CRM, like Honeybook types, to collect payments, bookings, have also a scheduler, like a Calendly for photographers or Acuity I was using, email, automate workflows and gallery. And you can actually, if you did, digitals or like you can do product sales through that, we partner with White House Custom Color. And to be honest, like one of my favorite things in there is not necessarily part of the actual software, but it is a pricing calculator to help photographers price themselves. It's had 4 years of data and time studies. And so, you can sign up for a free trial and actually just use the calculator if you want to figure out your pricing. But that's my goal. My passion is behind just really making it really easy for photographers to run their business with the software that they can use on their phone and figure out their pricing. So that's why Picsello exists.
So it's a CRM
plus gallery
basically.
plus a calendar.
CRM plus. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
I like it. So I guess that was a quick explanation. So how is it different from some of the ones that you mentioned, Honeybook and?
Because it's all like it's an all-in-one base. And one of the things, because we built it all in one, for example, let's say you're a mini session photographer that just is doing shoot and burn at the moment, and you just started out, and you have 5 digital images that you're going to sell. Most new photographers give them all because they're like, I don't want to choose, or, there's no easy way to upsell. Well, because we're linked, the gallery will not let you download more than 5 without paying more. And so it's sort of like there's little upselling opportunities within the platform, and even educating in terms of, if you did, separate even the invoicing and how you put together a package is session fee. If you do print credits, digitals are a product, right? So let's give that a number per image if you are going to be selling them, or you don't have to. You can do in-person sales and just have a session fee and go through there. But that's one of the things that's actually really helpful for those photographers that are just actually giving all of their product away, and that is by digitals, and digitals are a product. And so that's how we're a little different. And we have a business mastermind where, it's a smaller little mastermind group with our annual users that we have people come on, love to have you on, talking about in-person sales or ever. But, the business is like people are shying away from, but how to do Facebook ads or how to use Google Profile to help your business. And the marketing side of it, there's so many people, very talented photographers that talk about education, of the, posing and all that stuff. But the more that we can start talking about the business, the better, which is why I loved being able to be on your show. So thank you.
So glad. So within it, there's a community and there's ongoing education.
Yeah.
Is part of your program.
Software. Yeah.
That's basically sounds like a bonus, or
for our annual subscribers, we do have the mastermind, but then we have a user group that, people put in tips, and, we have a education blog as well that we sort of share. And, I had someone reach out this morning and she said, I know customer support is, for the software itself, but like, I have a real question on like my Thanksgiving sale that she was running didn't go very well. And so, you know, she's in the mastermind. I was like, just pop it in there and then we'll answer it. So my goal is just to really help photographers raise their prices and charge what they love at the end of the day. I mean, it's via a software platform, but I think it's helping. And we see a lot of data coming in of like, they're selling more, they were giving them away, and now they're saying, oh wow, they were coming and saying, no one's going to pay that in my area. But when you see the upsells of like, someone's just bought your whole gallery for $1,000, you know, and you were charging $350, so, and then you get them to come into the calculator and then they run their numbers because the mindset has shifted. So the more that the software can do it for itself, like the more that we can help the mindset, the better.
Yeah. So before we started recording, you and I talked about how passionate we both are about helping others, and that when something goes well for someone else, it feels like it's happening to us. Mm-hmm. And so what I hear in your explaining this is that you've set it up in a way because you're genuinely passionate about helping photographers and other people be successful.
Yeah.
That's a high value to you.
Oh, absolutely.
And so you've created this in a way that you can be doing that, and not just okay, here's a software, here's our workflow thing, but there's
and like there's definitely things, sorry to interrupt, but there's definitely things that we have within the software that, you know, you don't know when you're first starting out. Like we just released like email automations, and that is, you know, just to reduce the amount of follow-ups, right? Like, so we have templated emails written out by job type for like following up just on inquiries, following up on that person like submitted their, signed their contract, but didn't do the retainer, right? So it automatically follows up for you. I mean, just do some work for me. That's what software should do. And like take the headache away and the minutia of running the business. Wow. And, you know, that's kind of what, my ADHD brain decided to do.
So what they say in England is, it's brilliant.
Thank you.
So well, I have, sorry to interrupt. I have one little thought in the back of my mind pertaining to our conversation about pricing for profit. Mm-hmm. And I imagine you would agree with that. So I'm just going to summarize it. And if you have anything else to add, is yes, you can set a price, but now you have to figure out the path to get that money, right, and how to sell and so forth. So, for example, I use the theory of people invest low enough that the people that can invest really well aren't going to be like, oh, that's too much money out of the gate.
Right.
High enough so that the people that are looking for cheap and cheerful are like, whoa, it's that much? Because I have a strategy, my step-by-step sales system gets someone from a $500 or $600 initial commitment paid in upfront to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because I'm nurturing that whole thing. Whereas someone with a different way of selling or what they're selling, we have to figure out how to nurture that sale along. Because for me, with my method, if I just put on my website, most people are going to spend $2,000 to $10,000. That's not going to serve my system.
No,
I just need to get them interested and get that personal contact and begin to, do the whole program. So I just thought, it's a good idea to maybe have a little bit of a caution for people that setting a price also involves, and now how are we going to get there?
Absolutely. Yeah. I agree. And I think that you have your system in place, which is great, and I think that most photographers just need sort of the guidance of like, how am I going to get to that sale?
Right. Right. Okay. So 2 quick questions. One, I know you have a bonus or a little goodie that you would love for people to find. And so, and, acquire. So what would that be? And how do
So
they get there?
yeah, so one of the things that we sort of like really see in new photographers is the mini session interest and how to run mini sessions. So we have on our website, and we can put it in the show notes, is like how to run mini sessions. Just what are they, and how often are they run, and how to sort of market them. So it's picsello.com/photography-mini sessions-101.
Okay.
And so that'll give you an ebook of really some good tips on running profitable mini sessions.
Great. And that is in the show notes. So if you're like, but wait, I'm driving, you can go to YouTube and see the show notes. You can go to any of the podcast platforms and see that. Okay. So my last question is either an opportunity to share something you haven't, that you'd be like, oh, I wish I had mentioned that as well, around pricing for profit or whatever, or just what is your kind of last word that you want people to take away from our lovely conversation?
Thanks. Well, my last word is, sometimes it's just everybody, like, just know that it's really difficult for every photographer, any creative person, to figure out pricing. And you just sort of like, if you need to go to an accountant and figure it out, or you go to, hire a mentor or anything like that, or use our calculator, but know that this is being said out of love, and it's being said out of, we really just want you to succeed. It's not anything to do with, we have an agenda. I just want you to make money from your art and your time, and not be in a situation 2 or 3 years from now that you are, having to get out of, or having to quit photography because, your husband or your partner or somebody, lost their job, and you can't sustain, that income, or they got injured and they can't work anymore. So it's really just looking out for your future self. It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah. And it's also fun. And it's also
It is fun. Yeah.
creative.
Photography. Yeah.
And all of the whole business thing. Well, I want to remind people to stay tuned for my little quickie wrap up. And Jane, this has just been so delightful and informative.
Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to, if people listen regularly, they know I like to make new friends, and I feel like we have this fun connection, and I look forward to chatting again. I'd love to be in your mentorship program.
Yeah, that'd be great.
So we'll talk about that on the side. But thank you. Thank you
so much, Lucy. This was great.
You're welcome. Oh gosh, I just love meeting new people and never know where conversations are going to go. So that's the fun of doing this podcast. I think the quick wrap up here is basically about seeing what we're doing as a business, and that one of our jobs is a photographer. And so if it's a business, then we need to figure out how to make enough income to keep the business running smoothly and having money come in and being able to pay your employees, even if you're the only employee, in a living wage. And she mentioned what's the word? It'll come to me. Anyway, there's this thing she mentioned when we were talking offline about a passion tax. And I was like, what is that? And so I looked it up, and it says the passion tax is the expectation that people who do work they are passionate about will accept fewer benefits, lower pay, and poorer working conditions. And man, I think that sums up so much of the challenge here, is because we love it, we are not thinking of it like, and I need to get paid really well, because we would do it for free. Now I will do a lot of photography for free, but we need to get income for so many reasons. And that's a whole other conversation. So thanks again. Feel free to go to LuciDumasCoaching.com, Luci with an I, and reach out if you want to have a chat about your pricing, or I can take a look at your website or anything. And that's it. Bye for now.
You have been listening to The Highly Profitable Photographer with Luci Dumas. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please rate, subscribe, review, and share. To connect one-on-one and learn more about our coaching programs, just go to LuciDumasCoaching.com. Until next time, go have fun photographing and selling your work.